Hi, I'm Joshua Gordon, the founder of the Sports Conflict Institute. We are live with SCI TV, and today I am joined by Matt Belair. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Josh, for having me.
So, Matt, you focus on the mental side of sports, something that gets far too neglected. And what would be a really nice way for us to start, from my perspective, knowing a little bit about you here, is to tell us a bit about some of that background that got you into the mental side of sports, because I think it's a fairly unique context that you bring.
Absolutely. Well, my interest started when I was a kid, and I was a big martial artist, big fan of Bruce Lee, and was always curious about the mental side. How could people break bricks and wood and do all these pretty insane things? And it kind of just spiraled from there. What is the mind capable of? What is a human capable of? And what am I capable of? And that all comes down to your own belief, your own mental strength, your own mental acuity and ability to achieve the things that you can think about. So I just kind of went in, experimented with a lot of different things, meditation, hypnosis, all that kind of stuff. Anything that was going to give me the mental edge, I researched it and experimented with it, and eventually got to the point of traveling the world and training with Shaolin Kung Fu monks in China and meditating with monks in Nepal, really trying to figure out the secrets to mind power and what I personally was capable of.
So it sounds like then you're drawing a lot from some of the Eastern philosophies and there. How does this play in kind of Western sports culture? Maybe you could contextualize it a little bit for us.
Yeah, a lot of those, a lot of the philosophies that they use are applied, that can be applied here. The Western world is more practical based, so something like NLP or neuro-linguistic programming is super useful, and that's just kind of making it a little bit system based. So, in the Eastern philosophy, the one big thing they talk about is just being able to relax the mind, and that's where you need to start. You need to be able to quiet the mind, and then once you can quiet the mind, then you can put in the visualization or the thing that you want to be able to concentrate. So if you're a baseball player, being able to quiet the mind and watch the pitch come in, or if you're a football player, being able to see the play before it happens. That all starts from being able to acquire the skill of quieting your mind and being able to concentrate at a higher level.
So Matt, let's try and make this kind of concrete. What are a couple examples of athletes that you've worked with, some of the things they're struggling with on the mental side of their game, and some of the approaches and how that would look for them?
I would say the biggest problem that I deal with when I'm coaching or doing seminars or anything is people will sabotage when they come under pressure, or it's the big game, or even just a normal game. They do great practice and they sabotage during competition. And the biggest thing is a wrong perspective. So what they'll start doing is they'll think about all the things that can go wrong. And once one thing goes wrong, they allow it to spiral out of control, because let's say they've missed a shot, or they swung and they have a strike, and they start to beat themselves up. One of the skiers that I worked with, she's an amazing skier, an amazing athlete, and would just do incredible on her own. But every time she was in competition, she would either get hurt or something would go wrong. And it was because at the top she would stress out. And she would start thinking about all the things that could go wrong. So the biggest thing for any athlete is to learn to master your perspective, what you're thinking about. So when you start to think about that thing that can go wrong, you instantly have to stop and ask yourself, so what do I want? So if you don't want to strike out, you want to hit the ball, you want to hit a home run, you want to make a clean connection. If you don't want to fall snowboarding, you want to land the trick. If you don't want to throw an interception, you want to make the pass. So it's very, very important that you take that perspective from the negative of what could go wrong to exactly what you want to happen, and pinpoint and keep your focus there.
It reminds me of when you're teaching a child to ride a bike. Our temptation often is to say, don't hit that tree. And if you say don't hit that tree, what are they going to do, right? They're probably going to hit that tree.
Exactly. So it's where your focus goes, right? So if I say don't picture the American flag, or you go on the internet and you search in Google, no American flag, it comes up. So your unconscious doesn't know the difference. Google doesn't know the difference. If you tell a dog, no treat, he doesn't know the difference. He's just focusing on the thing that we want. So the way our subconscious works is very important to focus on the things we want, because that's what we need to give attention to.
So in your work, you've developed kind of three ways, I believe, that you encourage athletes to work on their mental strength and their mental game. you probably touched on a little bit of it. Can you help kind of put that framework out there a bit, and we can play around from there?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing would be, mental preparation and practice. And the key to everything is being able to relax your mind. So that's where meditation practice can come in and be very, very useful. But being able to visualize the thing that you want. The next thing, so you can get to a little bit more complicated game plan, but the next big thing is what you tell yourself, what your internal dialogue is. So if you're constantly beating yourself up, or for me, when I'm teaching athletes that are skiers or snowboarders, the difference between extreme sports and a game like football or basketball is if you miss the shot, you're okay. Where when I'm snowboarding or skateboarding and I want to do a backflip over a 60-foot jump, if that goes wrong, that could be my season, that could be my snowboard career. So there's no in between. I've got to land it. And that's the difference between having my mindset like, oh, I might fall on this backflip, to I am landing this backflip. There's no other way. And that's that kind of gravity of importance we need to kind of empower athletes in other sports and make it that kind of dire. I need to make this shot, but in a calm state of mind, like everything is focusing towards making the shot or having that thing you want. And then beyond that, I think the most important thing and what I find curious when I work with athletes is it all comes back to your own self-worth, your own self-confidence, your own belief in yourself. Most of the athletes I've worked with will sabotage because a lot of them, they have this deep core sabotaging thing that they're not worthy of being the best, that they're not, mentally okay, or even, needing to win to be okay. You're totally fine as a person, as an athlete, as a human being. You don't need to win the championship or win anything or make the shot for you to be a perfect, harmonious, beautiful human being. And when you can come to that connection within yourself, then you can express yourself in your sport honestly to your highest potential, knowing that the outcome is just the outcome. It doesn't make you who you are, but you do want to compete your absolute best because you are firing on all cylinders and you are fully connected. So that's something that I find interesting when working one-on-one with athletes.
Yeah, there was a book I read a long time ago called Zen in the Art of Archery. And that one really was a lot about that, about in order to, you almost have to let go in order to actually be able to break through to the next barrier.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's interesting too, when we look at sport and, we use sport as a catalyst to become better human beings. If you look at anybody who's trained high-level university or sports, they can usually achieve in all areas of your life, because to become an elite athlete takes a certain level of dedication, of mental acuity, and power to get there. So, with understanding that, to go to the next level, to basically become a more whole, happy human being, I think that's something that sport can really give someone if they can kind of, not make it the be all and end all, to do everything that they can to be their best and then let it go at the end of the day. I've done everything that I can to, be the best athlete that I can, but, that's not going to define me, and who I am. And me being okay with myself and my life and what I give back to the world.
So if I were to make myself a guinea pig here for working with you, I'm still a competitive track and field athlete. I'm old, so I compete in the Masters division at this point. But I've played a number of other sports as well. But track and field is the one I continue to compete in. What would be the way you would first kind of start to work with me, just so our viewers can see a little bit of what that looks like?
Sure. Well, the first thing, it would be what are your specific goals? And if I were a genie and I could give you any kind of power, what would that be? What at the end of our coaching would you have? That's usually my first question.
Yeah, Matt. Look, I like to win. There's no doubt about it, and I like to win when it's championship time.
Okay. So, there's definitely practical things that you can do. So we don't want to miss those. The practical things are, what are the best training that you can do? But the mental game is, what is the best mindset that you can have? So, winning is great, but if you have, the world champion, the fastest guy ever, comes and he beats you, that doesn't mean you don't perform your best. If you perform your best and lose, that's all you can do. Right? Maybe this guy is made of different stuff. You don't know that. That's why I think it's very important to compete against yourself. Because if you do powerlifting, that's why, boxing and UFC and all that stuff, they have weight classes. So it's very important to compete and get the absolute best performance out of yourself that you can, and you can use competition as a catalyst to improve that. And that's what CrossFit's all about. That's why people really like it, because they're competing and they see somebody do better and like, oh, well, he's doing it, I can kind of have that motivation. So we can use it as fire. But what is it that you believe about your ability to be number one? That's the first thing that we look at. Figure out how much you believe that you have that capacity to win, and then putting in the right mental programming. So what you're going to say to yourself, visualizing the win, and then being really smart about, okay, if you want this 100%, this is your diet, this is your training regimen, this is what you're going to say to yourself. These are the things you're going to do for recovery. So it's kind of mixing two worlds in achieving that goal.
So how realistic do I have to be? So I'll give you the example. You mentioned weight classes. Well, running doesn't have weight classes, and I'm generally about 45 to 50 pounds heavier than most of the guys I toe the line with of similar caliber. And so when I get to a national competition, there's a lot of people saying, well, you shouldn't even be in the race because you're too big, right? So how much should I be shutting out, external doubt? And how much, internal confidence should I have if maybe there are physical restraints and constraints like that?
Well, and that's where I say about, winning, right? So, because people are saying that externally, you're still there, right? On your own accord, because you've decided and you believe that you can compete at that level. That is why you're there. Now, if somebody is made physically to be the best runner and they've been training their whole lives, and that's the only thing they do ever is just run. If you lose to that guy who was made of different stuff, it comes back to you competing yourself and saying, hey, I knocked 5 seconds off my best time. That's an amazing achievement for you. And ideally you win, but you might not. The goal is to achieve your best. So if you're 40, 50 pounds over the norm, you're already doing something, that is out of the norm, right? So it's, again, coming back and figuring out what is your best. And again, when you said something about the external doubt, it's only internal doubt. So going into the race, and what is the most powerful perspective that you could have at the beginning, during, and throughout the race? So what things do you experience when you hit that runner's wall at the beginning, so your body is relaxed and you're not losing energy by releasing unnecessary nervous energy? So getting into a very, very calm, relaxed state, and then getting into a zone and just running to your absolute best ability. And those are things you can actually visualize running the race, visualize feeling nice and relaxed, and then having what I call is like a mental preparation plan for when you get to 200 meters, 400 meters, 800 meters, 1600, 32, or whatever the case may be. And you're like, I know at this time my legs are going to be burning, my lungs are going to be beating out of my chest, my heart's out of my chest, or whatever, and you want to quit. Putting yourself there mentally before it happens gives you a very strong ability to prepare for that, because that's where that mental game kicks in. I did distance when I was younger, and it's torture. It's slow torture. You have to run as fast as you can the whole damn time, but it's such a huge distance, you don't get to sprint it out and then be done. So you'd want to kind of mentally say, what am I going to say to myself? What kind of thought process am I? So things like, I can do this. This is easy. I'm in the zone. My body feels full of energy. Stuff like, even though it's a lie, you're telling yourself, I am full of energy. I can run faster. And getting into that right mindset, preparing for all those tough spaces that you're going to be entering.
And how much practice do you find an athlete needs to really have that stick, as opposed to reverting back to maybe where some of the negative thinking might come in during competition?
The way that I kind of describe it to people is the way we learn things. We create neural pathways or neural maps. So when you first throw a baseball as a kid, you've just created a neural connection, something that happens in your mind, and you throw thousands and thousands of baseballs. Now you have a neural pathway or a neural map. So when you have a mental map of what your beliefs are, how you're going to run a race, how you're going to react to certain things, it's like you've built a house with all of these thoughts that you have, and it's up now. Now we're taking and we're building a new house, a more positive house, a more empowering house. So what you first need to do is you need to kind of chop away at the old house and then move the brick over to the new one. And as you do that, it's a bit of a process. It depends on how big and how firmly this old house is, this old neural map, this old mental conditioning that you have. So the smaller that is, the easier it is to go over there. So the point is to catch it, have your, monitoring internal dialogue, and then putting that brick over to the place that you want. So it could be, within a couple days or a week, or it could be a couple months, because you have such deep hard wiring, and that's all you can do is just keep moving the perspective, and then eventually your natural system is your best, most empowering system that you've chosen through specific and direct and intentional thought of what the most empowering beliefs that you can have are.
And Matt, so for you in your work, what are the touch points where you find most effective to engage with a mental coach like yourself, where it's not just about self-help, but really having that external resource to help you with your mental game is optimal?
Sorry, I don't know if I understand the question.
So, at what point should someone be engaging a mental coach as opposed to, just working on a few tips on their own?
Oh man, I think it's the most important thing. I think it should be, at the youngest age. Everybody, we put so much importance on the physical, but really, 99% of sport is mental. Well, the old expression is 90% of sport is mental and 10% is physical. With all of the lessons that you learn from the mental game, that stuff you can apply anywhere. And that's, what I'm really passionate about is that the Zen Athlete program that I did is mostly for extreme sports athletes, because they face a higher level of risk, but it can be applied down the line. But in learning each of the tools of visualization, dedication, fitness and nutrition, meditation, all the modules in there, you can apply that to daily life, your business, your beliefs about what you're capable of business-wise, financially, within relationships, how you feel about yourself. So like we touched on earlier about a very strong athlete being able to adapt to the world quite easily because he's got a certain level of skills, and he's learned a lot through how difficult it is to be any elite athlete, whether it's a wrestler or basketball player or whatever, learning those skills and applying them to daily life. So I think the mental skills by far are the most important skills for anyone to have. And, there's even just a simple example of look at the extreme sports athletes of the world. There's nothing physically amazing about them. They're not, even the ones that are like snowboarding, they're not really yogis and super flexible. They're just really amazing at what they do. They're just kind of hardwired, and they have this belief within themselves, and then they practice and they dedicate to it. So there is a level of simplicity and extremely powerful, especially for the young kids. I love working with young kids is my favorite thing.
Fantastic. And how can folks follow your work or find you on the internet or Twitter or any of these things? What are some of the ways that people can follow you after this show?
Yeah, I've got my personal website at mattbelair.com. You can also find me at zenathlete.com. And my Twitter handle there below is at Matt_Belair. I am very approachable. Send me an email, and questions or tips or advice. I try to get to as many people who email me as possible, because ideally, we can have like a mental shift. When somebody learns something, you pass it down the line, and that's kind of my hope is to bring it more into the forefront, where mental training is just like physical training. What do you do your squats or whatever, and then you go home and you visualize or you meditate. And I hope that those two worlds meet as quickly as possible.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. Very interesting topic, and I appreciate the work you do.
Thank you very much, Josh. Thanks for having me.